Hello, Anna. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Daniel. Nice to hear you again. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Um, would you like to introduce yourself for the new
Yeah,
viewers?
my name is Anna Brahovic. I am graduate of international journalism. I am interested in many global issues. I hope to report on them at some point in the future, and some of them I'm reporting and researching now.
Welcome to my channel, Anna. So, on my channel, Genial, I do all sorts of videos. This is the latest venture into the realm of podcasts, and we hope to do this every week and release a new episode, but we will see how that goes. So, this week's topic is going to be on the ecological transition and also connecting it to last week's topic, how the ecological transition is influenced by Russia's war on Ukraine, and some broader themes about how the ecological transition is being framed and how it is quintessentially a capitalist dream. So let's dive into it. Would you like to start?
Yeah, okay. Shall we mention the elections or not, or at the end?
Yeah, we can start with that.
This last week's elections, Macron won. So what's your take on that, Daniel? Should we be happy? Are you like happy or sad? Or yeah, what do you think?
Well, I'm happy that my prediction was correct from the previous podcast, and the far right didn't seem to get stronger, and Le Pen actually lost. But I have to say, this is not a triumphant situation because Le Pen is obviously far right, and I don't want her to win. But on the other hand, Macron is still shifting his politics to the right and reinforcing all sorts of negative things like stronger borders and all of this stuff that really just makes politics shift to the right side of the spectrum. And now it's becoming mainstream, really. If you can only choose between far right and right, then the political spectrum is completely screwed up. It's completely out of balance. So that's my take on the elections. What do you think?
Okay, so basically, I have a little bit different take on that. Macron represents center in French politics. So recently, swifting more to the right because he was competing with Le Pen. But after the first round of the elections, there was an unexpected third place for Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is left wing or even like more far left wing party. He endorsed Macron as he thinks Le Pen is evil. And what was noticeable, Mélenchon's constituency, which is very important for what I'm going to say, are French Muslims. And you can see on the campaigning before second round, Macron was specifically using his rhetoric to get the votes from this group. For example, Le Pen was especially pushing hard for for a headscarf ban in public spaces. A ban like this already exists in France in schools, and this is a ban on religious in schools. But she basically said that she wants to make a ban on headscarves in public. And in his campaign, Macron referred to that. Basically, he stated that headscarves are not an urgent issue. And as before, he had a conversation with a Muslim headscarf uh, about feminism. He said that this is what's important, that he can talk with a lady in a headscarf about feminism, not banning heads. And this is important, not banning headscarves. So, as this is obvious political move, right? If a person like Mélenchon comes third and he's like not like center left, he's more on the left, and he has so much support because nobody expected that. That might actually mean that you don't have to choose between right and right, that like in the future you can choose either a lot on the right or a lot on the left, and that can also be possible future. And we can talk about this later next week.
Okay, I
Was
have.
that more concise?
Yes, that was good. I have a good counterpoint for that, which can actually lead us into some of the other issues that we will
Okay.
talk about later. So, I do not think that a radical shift to the left is possible because, at least in the current system, because we live in a hyper-capitalistic system, and a radical left ideology would be fundamentally opposed to that. So I don't think a radical shift to the left is possible within the current system, and that's why I think a shift to the right is more inevitable. Um, yeah.
Okay, so I don't actually think we are living in hyper-capitalistic system. I have quite not only proofs, but like um, books of economists I read, but this is not what we're discussing about today. Just to that, like to so I am not going to counter that today. But instead brings us to the next part of our talk, which is green transition in
Yes.
Europe, the world. Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to talk about the ecological transition, as it is called, and how the current situation in Ukraine might be influencing that. Do you have a take on that?
So I have a few points on that. First of all, war in Ukraine is very influential for the global economy, and not in terms of like oil and gas and other sources, but basically Russia and Ukraine are the two biggest producers of wheat and for the world. And there are many countries, especially in African continent, that are importing wheat from Ukraine and Russia. So the whole war may basically disturb those roots and may cause famine in those regions. So that's one thing. Second thing, well, basically that's this theory you said last week was a little bit agenda. Like, I'm sorry, but because there's also a take that there are also views that actually were my speed up ecological transition just to get more independent on oil and gas sources. Because of tensions with Russia, a few days after the war started, US tried to negotiate with Iran and Venezuela to diversify sources and get the oil from there. So basically, political situations in these countries may change. Probably not fast because Russia also has a lot of influence in like negotiations between US and Iran and other stuff. But that's one thing. But second is because currently a very big oil producers are countries with like difficult political and human rights issues. Actually, that might speed up the transition. Poland is resigning from Russian oil till the end of 2022, for example, and I think other countries. Another thing, and another surprise thing, which is from today, Russia cut off gas to Poland as of today.
Right.
We don't have Russian gas anymore, so yeah. So the decision of diversifying sources for Poland was taken, but not by Polish government. At least that's what I see on the news. Basically, because of the situation and because this like routes of import for these sources are unstable and nobody's going to predict it's like diversifying sources to different country may work out. I think that might actually incentivize countries to invest more in independent, like in the green energy that is more energetically like independent. Before the war, actually, Ukraine was massively investing in wind farms because they planned to export green energy to Europe. I don't know if you heard about this. So I don't know what's going on with wind farms, maybe the bomb. I mean, basically, Ukraine is the largest country in Europe after Russia. They have the same amount of people, I mean, they had as Poland, and they are 2 times bigger. So the areas which are like empty and very good for wind farms. I don't know what happens to the wind farms, but that was one thing. Another thing is actually the whole transition to the green energy thing might give a lot of leverage to China. I don't remember the data exactly, but yeah, their green transition is actually the fastest in China region. And they're not doing this for ecological means. They're doing this simply to be energetically independent. And it will be possible that in the future, actually, China will have another like power leverage because of that. They will be able to sell their energy they have from green sources.
Right. Okay. And this is actually where I want to jump into the ecological transition and what is commonly seen as the driving force of the ecological transition, right? So I think a lot of discourse around the ecological transition revolves around the climate target of 1.5 degrees and being carbon neutral and carbon capture technologies and building new speculative technologies and electric cars and all that very speculative and expensive and new technologies that will at some point replace the current ones, and countries setting targets for 2030, 2050, and I'm not sure, but I'm sure soon it will be 2080 targets. Um, and I just want to say that this is a very this solution doesn't fundamentally change the the energy needs of the world, and how, for example, just a shift like that with today, when Russia said we are not giving more gas to Poland, and that's forcing Poland to radically and very quickly find new solutions. This
Sorry, we are not professional journalists, but we should work on being as informative as we can. And in terms of Poland, I know it sounds dramatic, but Baltic countries, the way, I don't know if they did it de facto or they already declared it, but I think it already came, or it will be quite fast, complete cut off from Russian energy. So they already did this. And Poland actually, last three governments, they were for around 10 years preparing for diversifying sources from Russia. Distrust Russia in Poland, never mind the government is quite big. So I think in European terms, we have one of the best systems for diversifying energy source. So we weren't, like, Polish government wasn't really forced to find different solution because of it. I think we have like different contract and gas pipeline from Norway. It's going to be ready in like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, quite soon. And other like infrastructure that, for example, Germany doesn't have, so they can't resign from Russian gas.
right,
Just
I
wanted to
see.
clarify that. Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
Yeah, because that was dramatic, but not as much
Yeah,
as it sounds.
so it could have been more dramatic, right? But still, these changes that happen in a day's decision, they seem so far-fetched from the current targets of maybe achieving some lofty goal of reduction of 20% in 20 years, right? That was my point. That actually this ecological transition is currently, as it is envisioned, it is not radical in any way. And it relies on technological positivism that in the future we will be able to solve problems with technology, and this will be universal problems that can be applied. I mean, universal solutions that can be applied everywhere, and we just need to pour more money into research and technology. But
Okay. So
um,
do you basically, sorry, if your point is basically that the current situation of the gas shows that the targets for 2030, 2050 is just like wishes and it's not real action. Is that correct?
my basic point is that I think the ecological transition is not radical enough, and it is also built on on a sort of wishful thinking that technology can save all our problems and we can just continue living as we are now and just replace our current technology with new and better technology. So an example being electric cars. So we can just continue our lifestyle of driving cars everywhere, and instead of cars fueled by oil, we can just fuel them with electricity, and we don't actually have to change anything. We can continue our lifestyle like this, and in a couple of years it will be all good. But actually, this ecological transition is still dependent on upholding the current system of resource exploitation and bringing in the most profit for huge international companies. So, for example, with electric cars, um, it the construction of electric vehicles depends on very precious resources like lithium, and those resources are being mined in countries that are like the Democratic Republic of Congo or Bolivia. And if we continue the ecologic transition this way, um, we will not change the fundamental system, and it will still rely on imperialist resource exploitation. So I believe you have a point about the carbon footprint connected to this.
So yeah, I anything I wrote. So yes, basically, I can give here a little story. Uh, or I've met by chance on a museum trip a gentleman from an organization that is like providing consulting,
Yes.
like consulting for big companies. And I asked him a few questions, and basically he told me, I asked him questions like basically you ask, like how really ecological is this or how moral it is. And he basically told me a few words about the problem they are facing as consultancy, right? And first thing is basically they have this giant corporations that are set for making profit, right? And they are trying to incentivize them to be more ecological, and they are using, of course, financial argument for them because that's what will work. It's like this, right?
Yes.
But so this is not very like with big ideas or anything. But other than that, there's a problem. Like what is like morally problematic or something? That's like one of the problematic procedures, right? Like in current ecological transition, and he mentioned like carbon footprint. That's basically what carbon footprint is based on. Corporations that are using reducing carbon footprint thing can do a greenwashing way because they can still produce the same bad toxic stuff or like carbon dioxide, and they can pay, for example, that's the way he explained it. Do you really reduce like the bad influence you have on environment? Do you changing your technology? Are you looking for solutions? You're just using money to print a stamp on your product that you reduce your carbon footprint. because you paid a lumberjack in Congo or Brazil or even US to not cut forest for a week.
I actually have a couple of points on that. I actually work for a search firm that looks for consultants. And I feel probably a bit similar to how this consultant feels when we, for example, looking for we are working for with an oil client looking to hire hire an employee to open these oil fields, right? That I have mentioned in the previous video, previous podcast. And actually, this very funnily and very washily, this oil company's logo is a green leaf. I don't know if you knew this, but their carbon footprint was actually popularized by BP, which is British Petroleum, one of the biggest oil companies in the world. And it's a tactic to shift away responsibility from corporations and onto the individual, because carbon footprint is individualized, as in you should reduce your own carbon footprint, you should live a sustainable life, and it's pushing away the responsibility from corporations and putting that burden on the individual, when in reality it is these massive oil firms that are by far the biggest polluters. And this carbon neutrality is a similar ploy, as you have said. It doesn't really mean anything. And even if a business is carbon neutral, there are a ton of other ways they can still completely destroy the environment, like leaking toxins into the ground or oil spills or any other way. So carbon neutrality doesn't really mean anything, and it's a sort of greenwashing and pushing the responsibility away from oil corporations and improving their public image. My constant anxiety around this topic stems from individual responsibility. So it's also this pressure to live sustainably, to not use plastic straws, as if plastic straws were the only evil and all other plastic packaging is fine. You know,
Yeah,
that's
like
sort of,
exactly, especially in McDonald's, like it's very funny.
yeah.
Like they have a paper straw is in plastic, but in terms of like plastic packaging, right? I have to say that I lived in few European countries. London is by far the most capital I've ever been in.
Right.
Yeah, it was one of my first impressions when I moved here. I was really
Yeah,
surprised.
everything is in plastic. Everything is in
Yes,
plastic.
in every restaurant there's preference for throwaway takeaway instead of dishes. Uh, it it's independently of the side restaurant. Yeah, that was what really grabbed my attention, like very fast, you know.
Yeah. So there's all this stuff around personal responsibility and how you should not use plastic straws and all this talk, or how you should walk or cycle, but actually individuals are by far not the biggest polluters. And also I feel this anxiety with my work as well, like for example when I'm obviously just a little cog, but I'm still helping in a way these oil corporations that are clients of my company to find these consultants and place them who will maybe advise them on, as you said, some strategy on how to keep up a green image or go sustainable. But actually that goes against fundamentally the values of businesses and how to get money, because you get money by exploitation, both people and resources and the planet. So I definitely have this feeling of these two contradicting things where I feel personally responsible, but at the same time I know that I'm not personally responsible. But it's a different it's very difficult to live in this system because you have to participate. Do you ever have those feelings?
I just wanted to tell about my feelings. I work voluntarily for media development NGO with really an amazing work ethic, doing a work with a purpose. And yeah, my activities that I have is like conspiracy group, disinformation, and also hate speech, discrimination of religious minorities, and interest journalism. I was set to write report on a conference. There was an international journalism festival where my organization also had like a panel. It's like the thing is that positive changes are difficult. I mean, you can generate positive change, right? But generate positive changes sometimes it's very painstaking effort. And like, I don't have a feeling that I'm doing stuff with no meaning. I think it's a lot of meaning, but there's also a little bit depression in that meaning,
It's
I think I was,
frustrating.
yeah, I think I will send you the link to the conference because I think you'll find it. I mean, I know you're not like in journalism field, but you could find it.
Right, definitely send me the link.
Yeah, we can talk about the recent updates. I think it's important. We are not war as well, but as Russia lost during this war at some point already, and they're changing targets on what's the situation. Currently, they want to take a whole south and southeast of Ukraine and like link with Transnistria. Because Transnistria, they have been yesterday explosions in Transnistria. There is Russian military station there. Yeah, as we speak, the situation in Transnistria is getting more serious. For people who don't know, Transnistria is a separatist region in Moldova that exists for like last 30 years. It's not noticeable. It was not really noticeable before. It was more seen as a gimmick, I think, especially from like point of view of big countries, but it was really destabilizing situation in Moldova. I think now Transnistria become the hotspot. Last people of Transnistria for the first time in their lives saw New York Times team in Transnistria filming and shooting. So the interesting developments in front of us, and we will see what will happen with the green transition, with political changes, with this war, and with everything.
All right. Thank you everyone who tuned in and listened to the end or just listening parts of it. That's fine. Thank you, Anna, for coming and sharing your interesting opinions and news updates and just your lovely personality. And hopefully we will do the next podcast next week and we will have some more great and very amazing news to talk about, which I'm sure will not be depressing at all.
Yeah. Do you want to? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, guys, for today. I hope we didn't we interested you or entertained you or interested you for 10 seconds or more today. Let's hear each other again next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.